With me, it's going to be very clear the way I wanted to play, the way I want to, see us moving forward. I think the one thing I learned, I stick with the process. There will be some up and downs, but you got to stick with it, though. And that's going to be, I think, that will be the challenging thing too. Especially with media and everything like that. So it's going to be different, but you got to stick with it, and that's why, as I mentioned it today, it's not just me. I need more than that. I need my staff. I need my players, because we all have to chip in.
Welcome back to Boston has entered the chat. There he is, Marco Sturm, new Bruins head coach. Case and I have not had a chance to interview him yet, but I will tell you what.
Can't wait.
I've seen him on TV here in NESN and other networks. On the radio, I hear him on WEEI and other networks. He's fantastic. Not good. He's fantastic in the media. Super likable.
Yeah.
Super relatable. I mean, my first impressions here, we'll see what happens on the ice, right?
Right.
Can you coach? We'll find out. But my first impressions, Case, from him,
yeah.
I love this dude. He's fantastic.
Contagious.
Yes.
Like the smile, contagious. And I'm excited to see if I can brush up on my German from when my parents were stationed in Frankfurt, 4.5 hours from where he grew up, by the way.
Wow.
So, yeah, contagious energy, positive energy, but more importantly, I liked some of the focal points that he mentioned of like the clear, concise messaging. You need that, especially if you have any sort of, let's say, blended locker room where you've got young guys that you're trying to develop. You have a core that you want to rely on, that you want to extract the best out of, and he spoke on that too. He believes in the core that will be a part of this locker room, but he's also a key guy for that player development that we also want to see. So many bonuses from the characteristics and personality of the man to also the resume.
I also think, low key, like he talked about his family and how they loved it here. They never left, and he chased his dream, as he called it.
Right.
And now he's back, and he said his family was always like, get back to Boston. Well, now he's here, right? So the family's all together. Mm-hmm. I actually think that adds to a lot of things. Like, I get this is a business, but it has to be personal for him. Played here, fan favorite, family's here, never wanted to leave.
Yep.
Now he's back, coaching a team that he played for. He understands the market. He understands the franchise. He understands the history. He understands the brand. That has to add to this too, I would think. Well,
yeah, I think it invokes something different out of you when you're actually passionate about the place that you want to be in.
Right.
It just takes it to that next level, that extremity of like bleeding for something that you care about. And if somebody's going to do that for Boston, I think Boston can rally and support it. He mentioned that he is a family guy, so it's going to bring him a peace of mind to where he can probably focus on hockey to a whole nother level because he doesn't have that distance from his family.
Sure.
He also mentioned his kids being at uni, so there's another level of pride that goes into the Boston area as a whole. His son and his daughter being here. But something else too that just kind of like adds to it is the fact that he's also talked about the understanding of where the league is going. And so we're talking so much about him understanding Bostonian culture, Bruins culture, one of the most notable hockey clubs in the NHL. But more importantly, he did mention it a few times and we don't talk about it enough. He has an understanding of where the league is going. He has an understanding that young players have more of a voice.
Right.
It's different to coach guys that can hop on a podcast tomorrow and let the world know how they really feel. So you have to kind of curtail to each individual to make them a unit. And that's what I think is so fascinating. He's going to kind of be able to bring the historic parts of the Boston Bruins into the new era of the NHL.
He's uniquely qualified for the job here.
Very uniquely.
And it's very similar. We've talked about Mike Vrabel with the Patriots. Very similar. Played here.
Relationship,
now, he won on the highest level, but
connection.
Yes, and understands the franchise, to your point, the history of it.
Right.
But also that relatability with the young players. You and I were actually talking off camera before the show, and you were saying how, look, like, this guy, the relatability's there because he's been working with these young players anyway. You think that could bleed into stylistically what the Bruins look like?
I'm nerding out for this because I think it can bleed into a few things. For one, I tweeted it immediately while listening to the press conference. Players talk. Like I said, this league is changing. Some of the young guys that he impacted when he was coaching the Ontario Reign, you're talking about Quentin Byfield, who was a level-up player for the LA Kings this year. Alex Turcotte, a young guy who started to get some opportunity, a defenseman by the name of Brant Clark, who actually picked up quality numbers for a defenseman. So there's so many key guys that got that NHL chance after being developed under a Marco Sturm. And they've got friends in the market by the name of, I don't know, Will Cooley, who are sitting there looking and being like, hey, could this be a potential something or other? Zach Bolduc. There's just a number of young guys who are probably looking for their next home. One whisper from your friend that says, I learned from this guy, I loved this guy, you can trust this guy. That brings back the whole, this can be a more attractive place to play. And I know that's something fans were worried about. So Marco Sturm being at the helm of this just brings this beautiful intertwining of, like, again, the old with the new, and it could make it a destination that a player can feel that they have a future in. Something else to keep an eye on, though, from the nerding part of this, he talked a lot about defense, but something else in terms of his resume, when you talk to other reporters out in the LA area, he gave a lot of credit to Nate Thompson, by the way, former Bruin draft pick, former Tampa Bay Lightning player, a lot of things. But something that's really cool is that while he talks about defensive structure, he also talks about offensive creativity. The creativity is a big focal point there, because you're talking about a guy who's going to try to implement a team that can make adjustments so that a game is never too far out of reach. The Bruins were up there in giveaways, number 3rd in the NHL, but they were also number 3rd when it came to takeaways. So you want to be that puck hound, you want to take away the puck, but you also want to be able to capitalize on those opportunities and not turn over and just completely hand off games. And we saw so many games handed off.
Yes.
The biggest question mark for me in all of this, though, is the defensive structure going to change? The Bruins, under previous head coaches, have predominantly been a zone defense team. That's how they won the Cup in 2011. You see a number of teams that are kind of switching to this hybrid defense, Montreal Canadiens being one of them. Tampa Bay Lightning won 2 cups with a hybrid defense. That's what was run for the Reign, as well as the LA Kings. LA Kings, being a notable defense the past 2 years, needed to level up their scoring. We saw that happen this season. So for us to get a Marco Sturm, even though he wasn't coaching the LA Kings, we were talking about 2 systems that have to emulate one another, because you're developing players to get that opportunity. You're talking about a team that found ways to score. They were barely sitting at 2 goals per game. They upped the ante to 3.2. And that being the LA Kings team that, again, was pretty good defensively, coming from a hybrid system. So I wonder what changes might come into the mix of it, which brings us to Brick. Brick talked about getting an offensive defenseman. Those guys pretty much thrive in hybrid defenses. So it would be cool to see what links come together.
This is why we love when Kasey nerds out, because she knows what she's talking about. In fact, Marco Sturm talked about, you mentioned the offense, he talked about how they plan to light the lamp more often on offense. Take a listen.
The funny part is, and you know, I saw it with my kids. I'm telling you, it was my kids, like my Ontario Reign kids. I call the kids. I saw them with them, like, okay, do you actually want to score? You know, that was one of the questions I always had for them, because you got to show me, all right? When you're in the offensive zone, you can have the best structure you want, all right? But show me. Show me that you want to score. Show me that you want that puck. You got to show me that you want to be front of the net and work for it. All right. I think that alone, that mentality, you got to have. And if you look at perfect example yesterday again, or even the finals, if you look at the Florida Panthers right now, right, they go to the net, right, and not just one guy. They got everyone, and they go to the net. They throw pucks to the net. Different ways to do it, but they're hungry, you know, and that just alone, I think that's something I noticed from the younger generation. I think from the last 3 years, and that's something I'm gonna have a different mindset. I'm gonna try to teach it. I'm gonna show it, and I gotta pretty much tell them every day too. You know, it's just part of the job.
Coach mentioned the Panthers there. They did score a lot last night early, and then whatever. We'll get into it.
Postseason alone have been high danger terrorists.
Facts.
So,
we'll get into that later. But listen, you hear that. Your reaction to that, I mean, it's kind of what you were saying, right?
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned the fact that he brought up the Panthers, because it's getting pucks on net, but more importantly, it's staying around the net. So how many games did we see where you've got a guy who carries the puck in, gets to the net, and no one's there to kind of clean it up or polish it off or get that second or third chance? So it's just creating the tidal wave of opportunities and chances. We talk about depth scoring a lot, but throughout this playoff series, or throughout the playoffs as a whole, we've seen a number of teams where, like, they're just relentless with getting those extra chances. defenses, cleaning
Yes.
up rebounds, having a net front presence. A guy that comes to mind, Fraser Minton. I was excited about him joining, reached out to people in Toronto to find out what we could get here in Boston out of him.
Yeah.
And it's not just the fact that he creates a lot of rush opportunities, it's his net front presence. It's the fact that he's always in the dirty areas. And he's that guy who you got to go to work to get him out of the area net front. And that's what you want to see, but not just from a Minton, from a number of guys. So for him to have that mindset, for him to want that mindset, and then he says, do you want to score?
Yeah.
He's going to invoke some really, really skilled players, I believe.
Woo, she's on fire. Let her cook. Here's more Marco Sturm. This is his coaching philosophy. We'll get her reaction to
great
this.
question.
Take a listen.
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot the same, but a lot different, or new, or whatever you want to call it. But I think the defensive part of the game, I think that it's really strong in me. You know, I think that's something we built here, and they still have it, and that's something I don't want to lose. I believe in playing good defense that creates lots of offense as well, right? Do we want to spend too much time in our own zone? No, we don't. But I think that's the part now where I jump in now, or this new generation of coaches, when you get the puck, all right, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to play slow, or are you going to play with pace and having that mindset right away to be ahead of some other teams? All right, I think that's something I'm big on. Transition game, I would say, and then to work towards entries in ozone. All right, and again, ozone, we touched on it a little bit, being more hungry around the net and finding ways to score. But I think overall, if you look at the games right now, in today's game, it's I call it the long game, right? It's a transition game. It's a neutral zone game a little bit. And again, I think that's something we can definitely improve.
Case, hearing him talk reminded me of three things that Brick told me the day they announced Marco Sturm was the new head coach. Mm-hmm. Brick said the fastest way to get the Bees back to where we all want them to be, improve the goaltending.
Yeah.
So you need better play in net, obviously, defense, and strength down the middle so you can control center ice.
Yeah.
When you heard Coach say all that right there, and I tell you what Brick said, they kind of match together, right, in philosophy.
Well, it does. And Brick also said here in Boston Center the chat weeks ago that he wouldn't be surprised if an offensive defenseman gets into the conversation for an offseason pickup. But the bottom line is, I heard Sturm say, the long game in terms of 200-foot hockey. But it can't just be a couple guys on your roster that has that capability. It has to be almost everyone if you think about it. Again, if certain system changes come into play here, back to the potential hybrid defense, that makes your forwards have to play man coverage on the drop of a dime while your defense is playing zone. So everybody has to be pretty versatile. Communication has to be high. Chemistry has to be high. So his reputation for relationship, connection, communication, all of this just encompasses where this team could potentially go.
I also just like that he can relate to young players. I just think that's so clutch and so important. He's not some old school guy. It's like system, my way or the highway.
Yeah.
He's going to really connect with these young guys, and that's going to get the Bees quicker to where we want them to be, right?
I would say so. It feels like he's going to individualize his approach. So like I said from the top, it's going to bring everyone together in unison when everyone feels like they are heard and they have a role to play.
I mean, resident hockey expert, as I said at the top of the segment. I wasn't lying.